Welcome back to Susan Dawn's Spiritual Connections. Welcome to a very special sacred channeling. As usual, I did not expect to be doing this channeling, especially not this late at night. It is 4 minutes until 10 p.m. I am likely going to wait to post this tomorrow, but I didn't want to wait to do this channeling and share this experience that I had because it was a very powerful experience, and I am still understanding it and processing it for myself. We're going to process it a little bit together, and I am going to spend some time with it on my own over the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks, as we get more on this energy that I've been receiving. I connected with a new goddess, and we'll be talking more about her in some upcoming channelings as well, and channeling with her in some upcoming channelings as well. Um, this was very powerful and unexpected. I sat down this evening to do some EFT work. I began doing EFT through a new business coach, and it is a very powerful somatic release. As I've been doing some identity shifting, as I've been doing some deep level healings and clearings within myself, it is really getting into the root, getting into the subconscious. I've never been someone who shies away from the depth. I've never been someone who has been afraid to face herself. In fact, I love going into the depth. Ever since I was young, I've been interested in self development and soul growth. In fact, when I started my first blog back in 2006, 2007, it was all about self development and soul growth. And so this spiritual journey has been a natural evolution of that. So when I find new modalities, it just allows me to go even deeper into understanding myself, understanding the world around me, and understanding my place in the universe and our place in the universe. And it's something that has always intrigued me, something that has always fascinated me, in deepening my understanding and learning, continuing to learn, continuing to evolve in that learning. And so that's why I love doing what I do, is because I'm able to pass that on to you, and if it resonates with you, if it sparks some truth within yourself or makes you think for yourself, then I think that that's incredible. Because we're always evolving, we're always collectively learning, we're always collectively growing, both individually and as a global collective within the world. So, I have recently learned EFT, emotional freedom technique. It's otherwise known as tapping, and it's a new modality. I've also been, very um, what's been very important for me is also just being, just embodying. That was part of the sabbatical that I took in June, where I took a break from my work and I was just playing, I was traveling, I was socializing with friends, just being, because that's part of the healing work too. Sometimes, especially as divine feminines, we get very caught up in the energy healings and the modalities and the journaling and the meditations, and they all have a place as part of our practice. But what we're learning is that the embodiment is the most important part, because this is a lived experience. And so your lived experience is actually where your greatest healing takes place. But as divine feminines, you are deeply connected to the spiritual realm. Your crown chakra is open. You are very deeply connected to universal energies and bringing in those codes. And so, that's part of your structure. That's part of your makeup. That's part of your code, is doing this energy work, having some kind of an energy practice. And so I began to learn emotional freedom technique, and I've been using it when it comes to my business. I've been using it when it comes to my relationships. I've been using it when it comes to just my own self worth, and really just anchoring in who I've been in the process of becoming and this version that I am now. And it has been incredibly powerful, in addition to all the other modalities and healing work and things that I've been already doing. It's been a key piece of the puzzle for me, and I feel very, very grateful. I was doing an ancestral slash collective kind of EFT session that I had come across. One of my favorite YouTube channels for this is Brad Yates. Some of you guys who do AFT, who may have been doing it for a long time, you might already know him. According to the internet, he's the daddy of EFT. I adore his energy. I love his presence. And doing these EFTs through his channel has just been monumental, really monumental. I feel like I have just shifted so much in the past few weeks alone. I've literally been doing this for 4 weeks, and I have felt such a shift, and I have literally seen the manifestation of that inner shift. Um, it is just clearing more and more of that subconscious stuff, that stuff, the layers. And this journey is a process of layers, and it is not about perfection. It is not about doing the complete healing. There is no end result of the journey. Evolution is not finite. Evolution is endless. And that's not to scare us away from it. It is endless because we are endless, because we are infinite. Evolution is just evolving, growing. And how beautiful is it that there is always growth? There's always something to learn. There is always a new version of us to uncover and shift and and be. And that's the beauty of our human experience, is that we get to be who we choose to be, who we want to be. We are not limited in ourselves. We are not limited in our lives. We are not limited in our perspectives and our beliefs. We get to choose. That's us as an empowered creator. However, sometimes we believe that we are limited in some way, and sometimes we carry the codes of the past. That could be the past when it comes to this lifetime, and that can be the past when it comes to our ancestry, our lineage, past lifetimes. And so I came across this video from Brad called Clearing Trauma, or Healing Historic Trauma is what it was called. And I was curious about it. And so I felt the call to do it because I wanted to see, like, where can I keep healing any of that trauma that might still be housed within my body, within my cells, within my DNA. And so I began to do this session, this EFT session, and doing the tapping. And I felt the energy rising within me. Now, usually if it's something that's really affecting me emotionally, I will cry, and it's such a good release. If you, at this point, you know what an emotional purge is, and you know how good it feels to release through tears, through crying, and how good you feel afterwards, because it is literally a release. Tears are energy. They are an emotional, energetic release. You are literally clearing that energy from your body. And when you are suppressing that energy, when you're holding back tears, you're literally poisoning yourself. And so that's where honor your emotions. Don't attach to those emotions. Don't attach to the story that's attached to those emotions. Allow yourself to release. And that's what the emotional freedom technique really does. That's what tapping really does, is it allows you to go deep where any of that suppressed emotion might still be housed unconsciously, subconsciously, and allows it to rise forth and release. And so sometimes I will, if it's a special emotional hook, I will find myself crying as a release, as that purge, and I just feel free. I feel that liberation afterwards. Like, you can feel it rising. Sometimes I'll yawn, sometimes I'll burp. It really depends on what the release is. What is it that's clearing? What is it that's healing? So I felt the energy rising, but I wasn't doing the yawning. I wasn't doing any crying. I wasn't doing any releasing, but I felt the energy rising. I'm like, there's something here. There's something here. And so I finished the session with Brad and pushed pause on the YouTube video, and I just started going into meditation within myself and doing my own tapping. And I began to see visions of women who had been persecuted or prosecuted under the patriarchy. I began to see women at, for example, the Salem witch trials. Although it didn't feel like the Salem witch trials, it was like the burned at the stake. This felt like it was in Europe. And so it might have been a past lifetime. It might have been a collective past lifetime. I know many of us have experienced that. Something that I want to pause here and say is that we have all been persecuted and prosecuted under the patriarchy. Whether you're a male or whether you are a female, whether you are a masculine energy or whether you are a feminine energy, we have, all of us, been persecuted and prosecuted under the patriarchy. The patriarchy is a toxic energy. This is not male versus female. This is not masculine versus feminine. This is toxic energy versus divine energy, I guess you could call it, because the patriarchy has been corrupted. And you can see that in how the patriarchy stands out. There is such a thing as divine masculinity. There is such a thing as toxic masculinity. There is such a thing as divine femininity. There is such a thing as toxic femininity. So this is not matriarchy versus patriarchy. This is not one is better or worse. This is just the system of patriarchy that we have been operating under has been corrupted, is corrupted, and it is irrefutable. It is irrefutable. You can look just at the state of the world. You can look at the state of relationships. You can look at the state of how we connect with one another, male and female, masculine and feminine, and you can see that. It is irrefutable. And we have all been male and female in previous lifetimes, all of us. The soul is soul. The soul is energy. We have all had experiences as both males and females. You might have had more lifetimes as one or the other, but we have all had experiences as male or female. So this is not male against female. This is not masculine against feminine. That is the distortion. That is the corruption. That is what our sacred union journey is helping us to heal. That it is not one against the other. And the minute that we begin to shift that, the minute everything changes. When we shift our belief around that, when we shift our mindset and our perspective around that, everything begins to change. This is why it's so important for the masculine to honor the feminine that has been so suppressed. And in turn, the feminine amplifies that energy and returns that to the masculine in honor of the masculine. And that is the great balance. That is the great harmonizing energy between the two. That is the union between the two. That is what we're doing on this sacred union path of ascension. So we all carry feminine codes and we all carry masculine codes. You might consider yourself more a feminine energy in this lifetime. You might be female in this lifetime. You might consider yourself more of a masculine energy in this lifetime. You might be more masculine or male in this lifetime. You might be a male in this lifetime. But the patriarchy affects us all, and it has been corrupted. It has become toxic. So, this is some of the wounding that so many of us carry with us. Whether you are a male or a female, whether you are a masculine energy or a feminine energy, we all carry this wounding in some way, shape, or form. This could be passed down through the mother lineage. This could be shown itself in connection and in relationships. This could be passed down just in the patriarchy itself, in societal conditioning and programming and patterning. Again, just take a look at modern society and how unhealthy it is. Now, there is a shift that we've begun to see, especially over the past century or two. We really, truly have begun to see a shift in that to more of a balance. But there is still a lot of unhealthiness. And again, that is just irrefutable. Irrefutable. So I saw these visions of women being persecuted, being burned at the stake. Again, it was the energy of the Salem witch trials, but it didn't quite feel like that. It felt more like it was in Europe, and especially getting Eastern Europe. Then I got visions of my own grandmothers. So they were bringing me back to my own ancestors. And I saw both of these grandmothers are deceased. I was extremely close to both of them, and their passing really deeply affected me. So both of my grandmothers, or I should say neither of my grandmothers, actually married for love. One grandmother was fiercely, fiercely independent, and it was in my 20s when I realized that I was actually taking after her. You know, I was single when I bought my first house. She had done the same. She bought a house for her family, and then she had gotten married and her family moved in. So she was very fiercely independent, and she settled out of family pressure. She married out of family pressure and essentially settled. My other grandmother made a choice between two different life paths, and my grandpa was absolutely in love with her, but she, as much as she loved him, she grew in love with him, or grew to love him. And so in that sense too, it was a choice. And so when I when I look back at these examples, I can see where so many women in history, you can see that in your own family lines. Where was their marriage out of love, and where was their marriage out of duty, out of obligation? My own parents, they are soulmates. It's very clear to see where they did choose each other. They did marry out of love. So, in essence, they were breaking that generational curse, so to speak. They were making a different choice, and they made it as a conscious choice to choose each other, to love each other, and to have for their children better lives than they had experienced or that they had had. Then I was brought back from my grandparents, from my grandmothers. I was brought back even further to past lifetimes. And what I was seeing was like the late 1800s, early 1900s, where women were marrying out of duty, out of obligation, where they didn't have a choice. Um, Out of duty, out of obligation, over love. So they were without choice. And so, again, it was not a freedom to love, not a freedom to choose, not a freedom to be who they were. And so, this again is conditioned from the patriarchy, the corruption of the patriarchy. And this is all also where the feminine energy, females represented, were suppressed, were prosecuted, were persecuted. So, as I was doing this meditation and EFT tapping on my own, I felt this energy rising within me. And it was rising from my womb center, rising from the sacral. And as I was finishing, I just kept saying, I set my feminine free. I set my feminine free. I set my feminine free. And that's a line, the closing line in one of my poems. It's called Poem for the Divine Feminine. I have that in my book, The Unity Code. I'm going to read that at the end of this video. And what I found myself doing was I found myself finishing the EFT session and raising my hands. And as this energy was rising within me, I just let out this silent wail. I found my mouth opening up, and I let out this silent wail. Silent because I'm very much aware that it's the middle of the night, but also because it was like I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to cry. I did feel tears pouring down my face, but it was just this energy that was rising and pouring out of me. And I saw a vision of just a female figure just breaking free from chains. Now, again, if you're a male or a female, it doesn't matter. This is the feminine energy within us all that is being set free. So I felt Kali Ma with me. Kali Ma has been one of my guides for the past several years. She is the Divine Mother. She is a very fierce energy. She is the Mother Goddess who is the goddess of destruction, but also of creation. She reminds us that about the cycle of creation, that there cannot be a destruction without creation. There cannot be an ending without a beginning. And so I felt her here on like my right side, and then on my left side I felt a new presence. And it felt like a feminine energy, but it was someone new. It was not someone I had ever connected with before. It definitely felt something like something new. And as I was as I was closing out, as I was kind of coming back down from the meditation, from this energy, I it did feel fierce like Kali. It did feel very divine like Kali, but I still didn't know who it was. And then all of a sudden, I got a vision of a crow, and I'm like, I know that symbol. I know who that's associated with. That's associated with the Morrigan. Now, I've never deeply connected with the Morrigan. I only know the Morrigan because of, I work in a metaphysical shop. I have been doing this for many, many years. So I've heard of the Morrigan, but I've never deeply connected with her. I've never had her come through in meditation. I've never had her come through as a sacred guide for me. But once I saw that crow, I knew immediately. And so I looked a little bit up about her to understand why she was coming through, and what she represented. The Morrigan is a Celtic goddess that is associated with war, fate, and sovereignty. And as soon as I saw the word war, Not only was I called back to these prophecies of war that I've been getting over the past couple of months, and if you've been paying attention to my channel and my posts on Instagram and Facebook and the community tab here, then you know that we've been talking about war. And not war necessarily in the world, although it's been represented in the world, it's been showing itself in the world. For example, with the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, things like that, the potential war, that we're on the brink of war here in the United States, but also metaphorical war. And so I'm going to post um, a bunch of links to previous channelings and videos in the description box with regards to war games, the Sacred Circle um, video that we or live stream that we had talked about war, just in case you are interested in going deeper with this energy and what we've been channeling, because the Morrigan is also the goddess of prophecy. Now, do I believe that we're actually going to experience a war? No. We as a collective can change that. We can energetically change that. We can shift timelines. We can change timelines. And so, even though there is a prophecy, even though, how should I say this? Even though the Morrigan is the goddess of prophecy, do I believe that she's bringing through a prophecy of war? No, not at all. I believe that this is more of the metaphysical war, where it is the war of the masculine versus the feminine. You can also view it in, the patriarchy versus the matriarchy. You can also view it in political stance of, capitalist culture versus, I don't know what's the opposite of that, socialist culture. You can view it as far as, the haves versus the haves nots, the 1% versus the 99%. Like, there's so many indications of division in our society, in our modern culture. So many instances of division and separation, of war. But the greatest one is the war that we experience within ourselves, the war of the masculine and the feminine energy that then displays itself with regards to the masculine and the feminine, or males and females. And again, this is how we are shifting this within our sacred union work, by harmonizing the polarities, coming together in those polarities. So, what I was getting was that war especially between the masculine and the feminine, is ending. We set the feminine free. And as we set the feminine free, the masculine then is able to rise in honor of her. And the more that the masculine is in honor of the feminine, in respect of the feminine, in cherishing the feminine energy, seeing her in her light, in her true divine light, the more, again, the feminine is able to rise and amplify that back to the masculine. So, this is a reclamation of power and sovereignty. It is the rise of the wild feminine. That is where she's claiming her power. That is where she is unabashedly herself. We also did some channeling around the dark divine feminine. I'll link that in the description box as well. The Morrigan is also a guide for a spiritual transformation, where we are claiming truth, power, and freedom. And she bears witness to our rebirth. And that's exactly what we're going through. We are going through our ascension journey. And what is our ascension journey? Our ascension journey is our rebirth. We're clearing ancestral codes. We are reclaiming ancestral wisdom and ancient wisdom. And what I also got was that this is a marriage of ourselves. It's funny because, we tend to, I'll never forget, there's an episode of Glee from way back when, I don't know how long ago this was. There's an episode of Glee where Sue Sylvester marries herself. And I remember being on the internet at the time, and everybody was just making fun of, oh, she's marrying herself. She's literally giving herself a wedding. And ever since then, we've seen in our society, in modern culture and pop culture, we see a lot of feminines choosing herself. A lot of, in books or in movies or in television shows, where she might be torn between two guys or something like that, but she chooses herself. That's been coming forth more and more in popular culture. But what that means at the core, it's not denying partnership, it's not denying relationship. What that's symbolizing at the core is reclaiming yourself, is choosing yourself. This is your inner union. And then, once you come into that inner union, once you give birth to that sacred self, then you are choosing the partner consciously out of a place of love, not out of duty, not out of obligation, but out of a conscious choice of love, of true unconditional love. It becomes a conscious choice to love. And so, again, as I was just repeating, I set my feminine free, I set my feminine free, this felt like we were setting the feminine free of all who came before and all on our path who is still to come. Really seeding the future here. Okay, so it was a very powerful experience for me. Let me know if you've had a similar experience or how that might resonate for you. We will be going into deeper teachings with the Morrigan now that she is present, now that she is here with me as one of my personal guides. I will be learning more about her and channeling more with her because it just feels so powerful. And she definitely feels in partnership with Callie. Like I said, it felt like the Morrigan was on my left. It felt like Callie was on my right. And it just felt like being held. But being held not just in safety, but in this very powerful and fierce energy where, again, you're rising to become all of who you are. You're rising in your sovereignty. You're rising in recognition of yourself. You're rising to be unapologetically you. Something else they want me to say is I have not been feeling very well. I have a sore throat. It's been going around the house. I have a bit of a sore throat and swollen lymph nodes. And that is not a coincidence either, because that's all associated with the throat chakra. Voicing yourself, expressing yourself, being unafraid to voice yourself and express yourself. And that is a reclamation of the divine feminine as well. And again, we're not talking divine feminine versus divine masculine. We're not talking male versus female. This is the feminine energy with all. And once the feminine energy within all rises, so too does the masculine rise. And we are literally seeing this play out in the world, in the global collective. Look at any news source, look at any social media reel, and we are literally seeing this play out. We're just experiencing this on a more micro level through our individual sacred union ascension journey, or even our collective sacred union ascension journey. But as we anchor in this union within ourselves, as we are anchoring in that love, because that's what sacred union is. Sacred union is the container of love, of true divine love. Once we are accepting that, receiving that, once we are allowing ourselves to hold that energy, then we see the ripple effect of that in our everyday experience in the world as a whole. And again, we are really starting to see that play out as a whole. It might look like chaos, it might look like division, but there is actually a unity that is rising up underneath the surface. A desire for unity, a desire for wholeness, a desire for union within all. It's very fascinating. So I'm going to read this poem called Poem from the Divine Feminine. It's in my book, The Unity Code. It's also going to be in my new book. It is my first poetry book. I am so very excited. This is the proof copy. It is going to be announced probably within the week, probably next week. I'm going to share the title and the cover and all the details, and it'll be released at the end of August. So I'm very excited about this. My first poetry book, possibly my only poetry book, and it is Poems for the Soul's Journey. All right, where is my bookmark? Okay. Poem for the Divine Feminine. She is the combined goddess of the compassionate warrior, housed within the temple of everything I was, everything I am, everything I'm about to become. Fierce, formidable, tender, true. I've traveled lifetimes to recognize myself as I do now, diving into the ancient catacombs of my heart, navigating the universal pathways of my soul, dying 1,000 times in 1,000 moments to come alive again and again and again. Reborn, my feminine rises. I've sacrificed myself to the world, stifling my voice, suppressing all emotions, hiding from my eternal light. No more, I shatter the silence. The world pushes back, shouting outraged contradictions. You're not enough, you're too much, be more, become less. It chips away at me, creates cratered scars where love is meant to mend, not bleed. Who did you want me to be? I cut these strings and dive into the core of my faithful truth, swimming through the wild unknown to claim pieces of my neglected self, getting lost and found, and still here I am. Here I still am. The world tries to smother the holy flame. Don't you know I'm a phoenix and the embers are my domain? Brought to my knees through 1,000 surrenders, I grow stronger and softer all at once. This is my gift, my humble offering. I'm setting fire to the lies of all I've been told and breaking loose from the shackles of my existence. In this space, I am the beloved. In this place, I am part of the sacred. I'm ready to dance in the wilderness of all that I am. In this moment, I become. I set my feminine free. Sending so much love and so much light, and we'll be back soon.